These people are experts. I'm just up here to field questions. I know enough about Terry Pratchett to, you know, in the layman's terms to discuss it, but they're awesome, so don't be scared of me not knowing nearly as much as they do, because they really do know a lot and they're brilliant. So welcome to the Brit Track. Has anybody not been in this room?
Yay!
Wow. That's awesome. How many?
Actually, thanks
out of those people who have not been in this room, is this your first con?
Yes.
First Dragon Con anyway? Yeah? Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself, then we're going to go from Andrew all the way down to Dawn, introducing who we are so that you have a rough idea of who we are. My name is Caro, like the syrup.
That would be Caro.
Or Caro is how some people pronounce it. So I was called Caro for a year. Yeah. I was almost complimented and insulted at the same time. And I've been running the Brit Track for the past like 6-7 years as the director, and I've been on staff for 14. This is my 14th year here at Dragon Con, helping organize it. And I adore Terry Pratchett, and insofar as I didn't start with him, I started with Neil, and then I read Good Omens, and I was like, who is this other dude? His writing's pretty good. And then I went off and read a few things here and there, and then watched the productions and stuff like that. So we're gonna start with Andrew. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, hi, my name's Andrew. I've been on the I mainly work over in the EFF track, but I've been on staff for like 3 years over there. I've been reading Pratchett since the mid-90s. I'm British, in case you couldn't tell. But I've been reading Pratchett in the mid-90s, and I actually go through the books 3-4 times a year on average. Mainly through the audiobooks. So that's me in a nutshell.
I'm Roxanne Spazhouse, the artist in resident for WordMediaCopy.com, a very popular pop culture website.
Yeah.
You threw me. I've been reading Terry Pratchett probably since the early '90s. I actually started like Caro with Good Omens, I believe, and then went from there. I love both the reading and the audiobooks are fantastic. And honestly, it's sort of funny that he's a writer that, he should be mainstream. If anything, he crosses into satire opposed to genre fiction. If anything, he's like a Jonathan Swift of our time.
A little less pissed off, though.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sue. I am a podcaster and blogger with the Anomaly podcast. And I started reading Pratchett in college. After my first semester in a Shakespeare class, my brother sent me Weird Sisters. Therefore, the witches have remained my favorite. But after reading that, I read everything that had been published in the Discworld up to that time in the course of about 6 months.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. And then anything else Pratchett that I could get my hands on.
My name is Dawn. I can't remember when I started reading Pratchett. I'm not early like them. I'm actually still on the Lois McMaster Bujold mailing list. And we have a lot of English listies. And they keep talking about authors, and there would be one name that would crop up, and people would talk about Pratchett. And I said, okay, enough people have talked about it, I've got to go try one. And I actually was been burned by many authors I didn't like, so I tried to find what they had in my library. They had one book, and it was Men at Arms, which is right smack dab in the watch. But I went around, I said, this is really pretty good. So then I tried my secondhand bookstore, and people obviously do not turn in their Pratchett books. The only thing I could find was one slightly beaten up copy of Masquerade, which, if you don't know, is like a takeoff of Phantom of the Opera, and it's hysterically funny, and has a lot of great theatrical in-jokes, and it's very good. And after that, it was like, and this is when he was still with his old publisher. It was hard to find him here. I had to go online and buy it from Chapters up in Canada, and just had boatloads of it shipped to me. And every time I'd go to Canada, because my mother's Canadian, I'd be like, let's go check out that bookstore. So I found Eric in Halifax, and I'd have them shipped to me. And then thankfully got new publishers. And I actually got a chance to meet Terry. I went to the North American Discworld Convention 2 years ago. They had one this year. He wasn't able to come because, of course, of his health issues. And he is one of the, I feel, you go up to say it because I'd seen him at Memphis recently. He always jokes he hates coming to the country because, you know, the immigration, and he has funny stories about being left alone in rooms for hours. They think the people who sue them, they're terrorists. And so I went up just to say thank you so much for making it back, because he told us in Memphis he might not come back. And I really appreciate it. He's such a nice man. He sits there and he starts chatting with you. And you know his minder's going, you know, we do have a schedule to make, and he's just chatting. And like, I just wanted to say thanks, but he's really one of the nicest people. And just as lively and interest, you, from reading the books you get, he has a wide-ranging interest, and he'll talk about anything. And just a real nice guy.
That is what I like, and that's why I keep saying he's a great satirist. And he has to do, and he knows our culture, culture in general. Like you said, the Phantom of the Opera, plus it's a take on opera alone.
A lot of good opera jokes. So
here's a guy that has to do a lot of research, or he has to have access to a lot of the knowledge to make fun of it. So, and that's a reflection on us. It's just wearing different clothes. I mean, the sense of his prose is so accessible. I mean, there's nothing throwing anybody off. It's, you can almost give any book to somebody and they can find something about it. But yeah, that's what I think he said the only book that is in mainstream is Monstrous Regiment. It's the only one that you'll find, if he had ever won a Pulitzer, too bad, then his stuff, like Michael Chabon, would be in regular fiction, which his stuff really should be.
If you haven't read Monstrous Regiment and you have a fondness for like Apocalypse Now, I think it's got a whole constant running riff of jokes with Apocalypse Now jokes that is just too darn funny. And it just, I love Pratchett, and I'm like Andrew, I'll sit there. There are ones I keep in hardback, the ones I've gotten hold of, because I go pull them out, and if I can't think of what I want to read and I want something that will, because he's also an optimist. I mean, he makes fun of people. People are not wonderful things, and they're frequently their own worst enemies, and he mercilessly makes fun of them. But he is, I think, an optimistic person at base, so you don't come out thinking, oh God, I just have to go take the cyanide now. It's like, yes, people are stupid, but, maybe we'll muddle through. So I just love his books.
I don't know if you want to take questions yet, but go ahead. Just speaking of Monstrous Regiment, I think I've read all his books that have come out so far, and there's a running undercurrent of anger in some of them. Monstrous Regiment is furious. Really the angriest book he's written, and I see why you can say it can be mainstream, because it's almost vicious satire.
I'm sorry, you mentioned a website or something that sends you British literature?
No, it's another author. Lois McMaster-Bujold's an American author, and her listies are voracious readers. We have 1,000 of them on there, and they talk about other favorite authors. So since I like Lois's work, after enough people chime in, it's like my pre-reading screening group. It's like, 5 different listies whose tastes I know have mentioned this one author. It's like I found Carrie Greenwood, who's an Australian author, and I couldn't even find in this country for the longest time. But I love her books because enough people mentioned it. And Pratchett was one that a lot of the early listies kept talking about how much they liked it. And I said, I appreciate Mark's opinion. These are people I know what they like and other stuff. And so I just, book-oriented groups on the internet are great because you cannot possibly read everything. And that way you have people sort of like, they're like a horde of voluntary readers like Ben Aronovich, who's actually a Doctor Who writer, because I knew his name and they mentioned him on the Bujold list. But why does that name sound so familiar? He was actually supposed to be a guest at our local Timegate Doctor Who convention one year, and he had to cancel. He writes a great series of Rivers of London books, which are awesome. I recommend you try them out. So that's why I heard about. But that's why I heard
What's
about.
What's her name again? I'm sorry. I'm writing down as you were talking.
Who?
Lois
McMaster-Bujold, American author, has got buku nebulous
Lois McMaster. Bujold.
Like the actress, B-U-J-O-L-D. But yeah, so
and her books are good.
Yeah. Hers are like they're published by Bain, so like military SF book, a lot more characterization.
We should totally do like a Brit Track book list, like a book club, where we like get together. And,
that's a great way to get recommendations from people.
It really is. I think that I'm gonna go home and do that.
And Terry Pratchett's a great author. You can recommend to a lot of friends like for the YA books.
Pratchett doesn't like traveling.
I know.
We have a list of people that we invite every single year. It's the same list. It's in the same list to guest services. And as you know, that I don't have any control over who gets picked. at all, I go, this person would be really nice. Can we have this? And then they go, we'll look into it. And then the day that everyone finds out that someone's been posted is the same day I do. So, but we do, he's on our authors list, you know, every year, and they send him a nice letter and saying, hey, we'd really like to invite you, and he always, his agent will always send something back, and, you know, that says that he can't really travel and, you know, all this other stuff, so he just, the past couple of years, he just hasn't been able to.
By Memphis, you mean Mid-South Con 2008? I spoke with him at that con too, and invited him to Dragon Con personally, and he asked me how big it was, and I told him at that time, about 30,000 people, and he wrinkled his nose.
Yeah. It's just too big.
Yeah.
He doesn't like a big affair, and, you know.
He even, I think it was 2004 or 5 at Norris Con 4 at the Worldcon, he was guest of honor in Boston. That was definitely not as big as Dragon Con, and he seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah.
8,000.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
8,000.
He seemed uncomfortable with the amount of crowds there.
Well, British conventions are generally a lot smaller. I mean, I remember the Liverpool, one of the first Discworld conventions was in Liverpool at the Adelphi, and there were maybe 400 people there.
Oh, wow.
That's typical
That's still
size.
pretty cool, 400 Discworld fans.
Oh yeah, I mean, but even the big number of Star Trek conventions, I think the record was like 900.
Oh, wow.
You have 50-odd million people there. I'm surprised it's so small.
Yeah.
I believe the North American Discworld was capped at 500.
No, it's 1,000. I
Was
know
it
because
1,000
I didn't
now?
go this year, but I went in 2011 and it was.
The one that was in Madison was capped at 5.
No, because my number was like well above 5.
Really? I
Yeah, I'm
checked
pretty
out
sure
their
they told
website.
us it was capped at 1,000, which is a nice size.
But still, even like comparatively 500
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
1,000
Yeah.
is something that maybe he would
Yeah.
feasibly attend, but something like this is, unless he had his own room and everyone just came to him,
And
which
his-
I think that people would do. I mean, to be honest, no, not even the Marriott. I think first of all, if he's here at like the Sheraton or the Westin,
Yeah.
which is a little more, there's not
Away.
people, the crowds are, aren't as big, the restaurants, decent, like.
But it's a relatively recent thing, because even in 04, 05, he was doing signings and
Right.
doing tours, and it's the disease, really, that, he, and I think it might be too that maybe he feels like he would have to leave in the middle of something if something happened,
He can't sign because at the 2011 Madison we got a little stamp because
Yeah.
he just cannot stand it. And I could tell from Memphis, which was 2007, I think,
Oh, was
to
it
Madison.
7? Sorry.
Yeah, I have a coffee mug. It's the only reason I have it from the year. But he was still quite robust because that was when they thought he'd had like a stroke, and then they determined later that it was actually this Alzheimer's.
He spent over 2 hours signing that Saturday.
Yeah, and we were limited to like 3 books each. It was
And
like a line out
he's
the
so
lawsuit.
he's so impressive
Yeah.
as a writer and his stamina that this is not like defeating, him.
But he has physically definitely gotten frailer. So.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
So I wouldn't expect this.
the Memphis Con set their record that year. I think like 1,100 people.
It was-
their 25th one.
You didn't dare move
The
your car all
Long War.
weekend.
I haven't read it yet. The Long War.
I read what is it, the
Oh, did you?
longer?
The Longer.
I wasn't,
I'm not a fan.
no, neither,
read 'em.
because the all right.
I read them both, and
There's 2 new books out,
Yeah.
well, relatively new.
Yeah.
One was The Longer, where he co-written
Baxter.
with
Stephen Baxter.
Stephen Baxter, who is good. Stephen Baxter has a solid science fiction writer, science. With science in it is plausible. And it's only these little sparkles, really, have you noticed in it? You can almost tell where Terry gives
you
a
can
little bit of
see where it's
sparkle.
him. Mhm.
On a whole, it was sort of hit and miss. I was really impressed with Dodger.
Dodger was good.
I
Dodger
love
was
Dodger.
really, really
Yes.
good. I was really, and that is his actual historic fantasy book.
Yeah.
Sort of like Nation.
Kind of, yeah, where, he creates this character that runs into Charles Dickens, Disraeli, Sweeney Todd.
Yes.
Yeah, that was funny.
And the thing is, it's plausible.
Yeah.
That for that time period of running into these people, he makes it so plausible.
For Long Earth and Long War, I really like the world Like, I think that is a super interesting concept, but I find the story to bore me to tears.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Somebody had their hand up in the back and then they put it right,
Yeah.
Go ahead, ma'am. On this
Yeah.
side.
Yeah,
Oh.
I have
Hang on, let me, so everyone can hear.
Don't come with your eyes on.
Andrew will be our runner.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I had a suggestion if you liked Dodger. It's a book I've run into called Brood
Oh, I like that one.
that is darker, much darker, but still is interesting. And if you like the normal Discworld but want something closer to, say, a YA audience, the Monster Blood series has a similar feel.
Yeah. I like Drew because you actually have somebody actually doing a story, really, even though it's about Dickens, it's Wilkie Collins, who, until recently, people are looking at the Moonstone book. It's kind of gotten this little resurgence, and that's a really great little detective story.
And who's the author of this, Drew?
Dan Simmons.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I don't need the microphone. I was just going to say, if you're looking young adult, Terry Pratchett wrote a number of young adult books. The
Oh my
series
God.
is
Yeah.
what got
The
my daughter
Tiffany.
attracted.
The Tiffany.
You know, the Tiffany ending, I think, surpassed as a young person growing up better than Harry Potter.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, here's a girl, she's working, you know, that she's
Self-sufficient.
doing, she's self-sufficient, she's, you know, helping people cross over, you know, birthing children. That's work, you know, where you don't really, you know, as people, older people reading this, you can recognize it. You know, where you know, Harry Potter was fine, but it was,
It's
he
simplistic.
grounded it
Yeah.
into reality.
And can I tell you guys how
realistic?
Can I tell you how excited I was to see Esk come back?
Oh my
Yeah.
God,
I
yes.
was so
Yeah.
thrilled because that was my question for years: is whatever happened to Esk? And now we know.
What about this hard sci-fi though? Let's jump to the young age. What about the hard sci-fi like Dark Side of the Sun?
Oh, I've read them, but it's been a long time.
Strata's was funny because reading Strata, you can see where he got a lot of the Discworld ideas from that
Yeah.
later became Discworld. And they were quite enjoyable. And Dark Side of the Sun, yeah, I'm kind of like Sue. I read it, but I can't remember really well enough to talk about it.
No.
But it was enjoyable. And
I just read it
his
to my
worst
kids.
stuff
Oh, you
is
did?
Yeah.
better than average. So.
I
Did
read
they enjoy
that.
it?
They seem to, yeah. They seem to find it actually kind of interesting, especially since the main guy Dom is 13, 14 himself. So
Cool.
He's actually, because I like the Diggers, Truckers, whatever
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mill series
Bromelia.
is. Very-
Bromeliad,
The Bromeliad. I had read the thing 3 times through before I finally figured, oh right, that's a Bromeliad plant. Slow to pick up. And then I love the Johnny Maxwell books.
Yeah.
I go back and
Yeah.
read Only You Can
Stinky
Save
Boy.
Mankind. I'm
Yes.
old enough to remember those video games, and I just love so many of the references in that book. It just cracks me up. I don't know if it would get it to like an actual young person now, because they'd be like, what?
well,
But-
there's the TV series as well. I mean, they did Johnny and the Bomb was only a couple of years back.
Yes, if you live in the UK.
And again, my kids love that.
Yeah.
And Hogfather. They have to watch that every Christmas.
Oh my God, yeah.
That is because that's our Christmas movie.
Did anyone watch Going Postal yet?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
It wasn't
It
as
was really good.
It wasn't as good as the book.
I found it ruined some of the plot points, especially with the changing of the characters and the positions and
The
their
positions
roles.
were a little weird. It was a little weird. Yeah.
Having Adora Bell being
Yeah.
an active kind of
Yeah.
with it.
I thought she was active.
No, she was very passive in it.
She was sort of a commenter, like, so
Yeah.
you're doing this.
Oh,
I know you're.
She was not the one who broke the trunk.
I like Charles Dance's Veterinary.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna switch out roles, I mean, I really was surprised with Jeremy Irons in
Yeah.
the first one.
I thought actually I did a better job than him anyway. I'm looking on.
Irons is what when I see veterinary, that's who I see. I see.
But Charles Dance had a better coat.
I did.
Yeah, especially since I'm dressed as a muggle today.
I did like Moist. I have to admit, that was a good
He was
cast.
a very good actor for it.
Very good Moist, but
And even Saccharissa, Tamsin Gregg.
you kept complaining she was too old.
Well, she is a bit too old. She was
You-
supposed to be
you
the
kept-
20-something,
Yeah.
pretty but dressed down a lot. And Candace and Greg's many things, but she'd be a great weather wax. As in, handsome but not pretty.
Man, are they ever going to do any of the witch series?
Well, they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
There was a cartoon series.
Yeah.
That's what
I
If,
yeah.
if they do, it just, in my head, my dreams, I kind of want Weatherwax to be Maggie Smith and Nanny Ogg to be Angela Lansbury.
No, I think
She can be dirty, y'all.
She could, she has too many teeth for Nanny. She's a great actress.
Oh, what's her name?
Kathy Najimy would make a good nanny.
No, the chick from Red.
Helen Mirren?
Helen Mirren,
No, Helen Mirren.
I think you read the character.
As Esmeralda?
Yeah.
Yeah, she could do a great
Oh,
wax.
Helen Mirren, yeah.
Yeah.
Either that or we wait for Tilda Swinton.
That's so funny. I was just ooh, psychic bond there. The thing about the Brits is they have so many great actors. That any casting set where you mostly deal with British actors is just like juicy goodness.
Every scene they stick
She's
stealing
supposed to
from one
be
another.
also one of the most beautiful women too, and that's why she doesn't like. She's supposed to be one of the most beautiful women, and she's like, why can't I be like Nanny Ogg and be
Well, it's not.
witch-like?
It's not so much that she's beautiful; it's that she has very good skin.
Yeah.
And I think there's a line in one of them that says, "You cannot call her beautiful without lying, but you can call her handsome."
Handsome, yeah.
But her twin sister is beautiful.
Well, that's because she's evil.
And she cheats.
Nanny cheats too.
Oh, Nanny cheats all the time.
Is there a way to not cheat? I don't think Nanny understands the concept. I have to wear Nanny. She's like the id,
Yeah.
Granny's like a super ego, which I would guess would make Margaret or the other one, what your ego.
I always thought that being a witch, the lesson that they don't say is that you have to make your own rules. It's not cheating, you're just making your own rules.
That would probably be.
That's what I do all the time.
And then there's Agnes.
I love Agnes.
Yeah.
Cracks me up. Poor Agnes.
Agnes would be like a Dawn French,
Oh yeah.
but younger.
Yeah, young Don French would be awesome for Agnes.
Get your hand up.
I was just thinking that
The slim girl
Granny
inside.
Weatherwax is kind of thought of as like the most powerful witch.
She is.
If they had a leader, it would be her, but they don't, so she's not.
Yeah.
But she is. And but I always thought of Nanny Ogg as kind of the power behind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Nanny Ogg does all this stuff, and she always kind of is like, no, that's Granny Weatherwax doing it.
In a weird way, Nanny Ogg is like the conscience of the little group.
She's the Facebook. She's the Facebook of the.
Well, I mean, she can steer them from not going too far. In her grounded, well-grounded type, earthy presence.
Well, my favorite scene with that kind of shows their relationship in my mind is when Granny Weatherwax is having the staring contest with the sun, and they draw that big circle around, the lightning and magic is going all over, and the little kid runs through, and it's because, and that's how Granny Weatherwax kind of wins that, and it's all because Nanny Ogg is sitting on the other side of the circle just waving sweets at the kid.
Yeah.
And that is great. You know what? I really wish if they were going to make movies, I would love Carpe Diem. Right now, with Elegant Vampires being in, I really think that could be a successful movie.
And they're relatively smart.
To have Agrat be introduced.
The first one the mini one, miniseries.
Oh, CSI on 4-4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Color Magic Hogfather.
Color.
Color of Magic.
Color Magic bothered me at parts.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
there's a lot. I think because I love the book so much,
Well-
and I just kind of.
Well, the problem is the book doesn't really have a plot. It's
No.
I love
No,
it. I grew
it
up reading all that stuff.
It's
It's
like
great. It's a parody pastiche. So there's
Yeah.
no plot there. So to make a movie
It's
where you
tough.
have to lose all the little vignettes that make it so amusing.
It's an inverse Lord of the Rings, because
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is just 3 movies about people walking to a place, The Color of Magic Like Fantastic is a movie about two people where one of them just running away from everything.
Right. If you want to compare it, it's like a travel log.
Yeah, and
that
those are hard
Dan
to make a
Brown
movie out of,
notes
right?
from. Yeah. So if you read a Dan Brown thing, it's like, oh, I'm waiting for cities to sign up. Can we be on your next book? I mean,
I was talking
to me, it's a whole thing about travel.
What? I'm sorry, what?
I was talking to Sean Penn, he's a friend of mine. I thought he did great as Tupac.
I think that I don't think the casting was the issue. I think it was the
Well, Rincewind.
I think I think he was not a good Rincewind.
Yeah,
he was too old for
Way
Rincewind.
too old. David
Jason.
He's a great actor. Yeah, I think he was too old.
I mean, there are moments in it that were really.
He was a great Albert, though.
As a fan, there's moments in it where it's like his luggage, and. And I like. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, it's exactly what I pictured in my head. But like, there's certain things that I think that I don't think that out of all the stories that they chose, I was surprised that they chose those. They chose
Well,
it.
there's a reason for that, and that's David Jason.
Yeah,
He's a huge Discworld fan, and he picked it, he pushed it, and his requirement was he be Rincewind because he's been a Rincewind fan for 30 years. He pushed the project on the condition that he got to be Rincewind.
So it was a fan production.
It was a fan production. I mean, the opening sequence explaining the Discworld is amazing. Like just the way that it looks, and the CGI and what they did with it was really. Even now, I went back and watched it recently. I was like, wow, this is really good quality stuff. But I think that you're right. That I think it was a sojourn more than anything that the book was, and so when you try to translate that over, it comes off really weird. So I liked it visually, and I appreciated the story, but I didn't like the way that they tried to use the stories from it.
If you don't want to like taint your sensibility on his prose, get the audiobooks.
Make sure
Nigel
unabridged.
the unabridged. Nigel Planer and
Stephen
Briggs
Briggs
are fantastic. Both of them will do voices and stuff. And I think, is it Masquerade that it's done by a woman?
No, it's Equal Rights and Weird Sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, Weird Sisters. Yeah.
Which is one done by Celia Imrie.
Yeah, she does a great job.
Have you seen the young ones, Nigel is.
Yeah.
He does he's
the transition from Planer to Briggs is rough, but once you get used to them, they're wonderful on their own.
Yeah.
He's Sidney in Hogfather, and
he's the great astronomer from
great astronomer with Terry Pratchett in Color of Magic.
He needs to do more work.
I would have liked to see him as Rincewind. I can't help it.
Yeah, Nigel Planer would have been great.
Because he's very, if you read, the description of Rincewind, he's very angular, whereas David's,
Well,
short,
from what I understood,
he's more of a chancellor. Well, no, he's shorter. He would be the provost or something.
There's one person I think who would make it even better, Rincewind, and that's he already played him in the 90s, and that's Eric Idle.
Yeah.
He played him in the video games.
Yeah.
Oh,
And he has the attitude, he has the voice, he has the inflections, and the timing.
And there's a lot of physicality to Rincewind.
The problem with Rincewind for a movie is Rincewind as a character has very little agency.
Yeah.
And I think that to have your protagonist, he's reactive. You're right. Yeah. He is running away from it. It's funny. I love his books for that reason. Because I love the Australian one. But as a character, the protagonist of a movie has to take a little bit more freight. And I just don't know if Rincewind's a good choice.
But if you did sorcery, Rincewind does step up. He does.
The sock in the brick in the sock.
If you want,
he does occasionally step up, especially when you mess with the hat.
Again, I just can envision Conina the Barbarian hairdresser myself. Oh yeah.
So if you're looking for characters with agency, what do you think about the other guy? Captain of the Guard, Night Watch.
Sam Vines.
Vines rules.
Yeah.
He's my favorite character.
I'd kill to see a good Vines movie.
You can make a whole TV series out of it.
I've got so many people.
Yeah, but
they're trying to.
Are they?
They're trying to. It's kind of like CSI more important.
Oh my God.
Yeah, man.
I've heard about it for like 2 years.
You couldn't really
Well,
It would be really hard to do that in like 2 hours.
Well, since we did this panel last year, I've heard absolutely
No,
nothing.
me too. Well, are they still running into the whole licensing?
Yeah.
I thought the licensing was sorted. It was supposed to be done, and the last thing I heard was a month before last year's Dragon Con.
Yeah.
For this when we talked about this panel, and then I've heard nothing since.
It was in Sci-Fi Weekly. They had the approval of Terry Pratchett and everything in the go-ahead, and they were trying to work out a script.
All right, here's a question. What do we know about his daughter taking over? Is she got like anything in the pipe for us to see before
he pops it?
Yeah, before he decides or whatever.
I think she's been busy with other things. She does video game.
She did the Laura Croft reboot.
And the new Laura Croft reboot, the new Tomb Raider. She did the story writing and back to that. So she's got some kind of background in writing.
No, I know that, but I'm wondering if she's got a Discworld story coming through the pipe in the near future.
Not that I've heard of.
She may not even touch that until after.
You think?
I don't think she would touch it until after he passes.
Okay.
Unless they co-wrote
collaboration.
Yeah, they
co-wrote it. Well, I mean, he's up. All right. Okay, it doesn't have to be a Discworld book. If he
just a book together.
Yeah.
I think that it would be feasible for them to do one together. I think right now he's kind of still very like, I want to do this, as much as I can by myself, and I might get help from other people. But I don't think he's going to reach out to his daughter until a little bit closer to his.
Which the interesting thing is him as an author is so prolific. I was at the Ray Bradbury Remembrance thing, and they found boxes and boxes of stuff that has not been published. So I can just imagine Terry having the same kind of amount of notes and things.
Or tapes and tapes.
Or tapes.
I think he's probably got a ton of just ideas on tape. And even then, if they were to take those audio recordings and put that on disc.
Well, I don't know about tape, but he's such a technologist as well. I remember seeing his documentary, his computer setup. That was 4 years ago. Even now, it makes me green with envy. You got this huge 6-screen setup.
Yeah.
He loves his technology, so I
think that I would be surprised if he had he's got tons and tons and tons and tons of audio notes. I'd listen to it.
Yeah. Again, as a technologist, his quote in that thing is, "Why do I only have 6 screens? Because I don't have room for 9."
What documentary are you referring to?
It was one he did 2-3 years ago called "Living with Alzheimer's." It's where he went through his diagnosis and he actually took the cameras to some of his checkups and while he had his brain scans and things like that, and he was talking about living with it and his decisions, how he might go to Dignitas in Switzerland for assisted suicide, things like that.
Yeah, it was enough for NPR to pick up the story.
Yeah.
And nobody else had that. It's like, well, here's somebody that is actually looking into.
They did a whole documentary about going to Dignitas because they showed it at the North American Discworld Con I went to. I didn't go see it because it was just I was too depressed at the thought.
Well, he made a great comment that's he really wishes he didn't have to because he really wants to die while he knows who he is around his family with a glass of I can't remember exactly which spirit in his hand, but he wants. That's what he wants to do, and he wants to die in his country, and he's really upset the fact that he might not be able to.
The interesting thing about Pratchett, speaking of death, and I brought this up I think last year, is here's an author. We spend a lot of time trying to save people. We don't get out alive, but throughout the course of his books, he's really taught people death. Mm-hmm. Death is a normal thing. Because there's the character death, so I see it as, it's not a horrible thing.
No.
It's something we have to live with, and here's an author saying it's every day, it's an everyday thing. I even like in the stories where it's like some poor coachman or whatever,
well,
and it's like, well, you need to go.
The scene in one of the witch books where the baby dies.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But, sorry, a little bit more on the daughter. She has written a fantasy novella, which was released with a computer role-playing game. She's also written several TV scripts and has won awards for video game scripts, and she has written a comic book mini-series called Mirror's Edge.
That's a game as well.
Yeah, based on the game. And her first feature film is, I believe, shooting currently.
Oh.
It's
How
not.
did you get a signal?
This lady.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to get you.
Oh no, you're fine.
No.
Sweet Andrew, thank you.
Okay. We were talking about death in Pratchett's books. I think the concept of memory, especially in the Tiffany Aikens series, and what memory and reality are, was a lot to do with him reaching out to his readers, trying to explain his fears and what he feels in a way that would make sense to an audience. And that was one of the things I loved the most about the Aikens series, because you read a lot of critiques on the books have changed, his writing's not the same, he's losing something, but the fact that he's still writing and still cares, I think, is what you see in the Aikens book.
Yeah, it's like the hope that, you know, as we strive through our life, we always have something we could all look forward to, you know, of keeping going and stuff. So.
Yeah, because right now it's changed a bit. What I've noticed is it's gotten a lot dirtier.
Right?
But going back to the death thing as well, I think there's an actual parallel, I think, with the character with Terry, and that's Windlepoons. When he gets to the end of his life, Windlepoons dies, but he hasn't died, and then he says, okay, I'm set, I'm done now, I'm at peace, now I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Right at the end of that,
Reaperman,
yes.
Yeah.
So he's preparing his fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, as a chronically ill person, have made I identify with that a lot, and have made my parents promise in my will that the same type of situation that he has carried out with, that he has talked about, because of this, because I know what's going to happen, and I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, I'm creeping up on 50 and you know.
You don't look it.
Thank you. And you know, it's like, okay, I guess it took me to near 50 to like, oh, let's think about growing up. That I did a living will, and I got, you know, a regular will together. My friends were like, do we need to know something? I'm like, no.
I think it's healthy to be.
It's very
have
healthy.
that conversation.
The thing is Terry's of a time on his age and everything and death was always in the house. You know, some form of death was always in the house. You know, you can have influenza, the flu, and wipe out an entire family at the beginning of the 20th century. You know, so he probably knew this. You know, just growing up, hearing from his grandparents and stuff. It's being pragmatic. You know, it's like Granny Weatherwax, you know, this is life. This is, you know, there's no fantasy. This is how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think if I remember when we saw him at Mid-South-Con, his own father had just died, if I remember properly. He was like 80-something. So he had just been dealing with that, and then of course got his diagnosis. Because like my mother's 83. So we have little discussions about, like, well, if my health care gets such and such. She's very funny, my mother. She says, if they put me on a machine, you come into that hospital and you unplug that damn thing. So it's like, I've threatened. I said, I'll just promise not to pay. We'll unplug you in a heartbeat. You know? But it's something, yeah, and Rox is right. Anybody, a car out there, gonna turn too quickly, you know. So we should all be out of here tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm only at 30. And I just got married a couple months ago, and you know, my grandparents, they have a living trust and a living, you know, family fund or whatever, and they have their wills and everything. And right after I got married, they literally at the reception were talking to me about it, like, you need to start doing this. These are things you need to start. talking about, I'm like, I don't know if it's appropriate to do this at a wedding, but.
Well, if you think of it this way, because I have friends who died intestate. If you have anything to, and I'm not joking, if you have a pet, if you have objects you'd like to go to somebody, if you, God forbid, if you have children, please go out and get a will right away.
Yeah.
Those are all things that otherwise the state's going to come in and make these determinations.
Yeah.
And of course, especially if you're not a person who can't marry your significant other.
So the upcoming,
you
to
need
bring
lots
that
of people.
thing up, Raising Steam, the next
Who's looking forward to it?
I am. It sounds great.
Yes. I love I think it's an Unseen University academic.
Yes,
I love
we've gotten quite a bit because we had the Unseen
Academicals.
And that was a lot of fun. That was a fun book. I like the fun. I love the Chancellor. I think he's a great character. Actually, I would like to see. Yes, I would like to see that. What book is it where he, growing up, kind of did he?
Ah, Lords and Ladies.
Yeah.
Romancing Esmeralda.
Yeah. I'd like to see that. That was a fun. That's a fun series. The Academicals. I mean, just to see on how. We don't, the inner political, I mean, we don't, well, there's political stuff in any college, when you have teachers and.
As a professor, I think it's very ironically done well. It's kind of true.
Oh, okay. There we go, there's our expert.
So the students are just
football side, that's pretty realistic as well. So where I grew up in Liverpool, you got Liverpool and you got Everton. And the Dimmers and the others. That's just like Liverpool.
Are the pies that bad?
I don't know about the pies. I didn't even go to the games.
One of my chemistry department used to say that the faculty fights got more vicious. It was inversely proportional to the importance of, so if it was the color on the walls, they would be vicious. The curriculum, they could agree what was important about chemistry to learn pretty much, but the color you were going to paint the hallway, it got to be a bloodbath. So, I can only imagine who gets that cruet tray first. It must be a horrible debate.
This kind of in my head.
I forgot. Was there a Chancellor before Rid Cully?
There's like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
One of them was Weatherwax, actually.
Greymold in, I think Greymold in Sorcery.
Okay.
And then they had
Weatherwax and
Golden Weatherwax in the first book.
And then he got killed by
Rid Cully was the first that they just couldn't kill.
It used to be Dead Man's Pointy Sword.
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't there the guy who he came downstairs and everybody was calling him sir and it took him 2 weeks to figure out he was Arch Chancellor.
Why he was. They promoted him to Arch Chancellor and didn't know about it.
I can't remember which book that was. Which book was that?
I love the poor person.
No, Reaper Man was already.
No, that might have been Reaper Man.
Yeah, because
Rid Cully was not.
They already had.
Oh yeah, Rid Cully was the first. Reaper Man was the first Rid Cully book because that's when
Poons was. Arch Chancellor of Moving Pictures, which was before that.
Okay, but I know Poons was going in that book. He was saying that they're trying to tell him that that little Rid Cully guy who was crying for his mother on the first night was the Arch Chancellor. He knew that could be.
I thought it was Guards.
Oh, no,
I love Guards.
I don't remember which one's first.
Oh, it was
definitely enough.
Because I remember making the first attempt.
Yeah, it was internet connection.
Yeah.
It was Eric.
Oh, Eric. He was in Eric as well. So.
Why is he? Well, I don't
Hunter
remember.
Stibbins became a wizard in moving pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, because remember the whole joke is that Ponder Stibbins got to graduate because Victor moved out. There was the know what's your name was the entire exam.
Right.
It's probably why Ponder has that feeling that a lot of us have that. Well, they don't know I'm faking it. One day they're going to find out. I'll be exposed. I love Ponder.
Yeah. I think the whole problem is Ponder Stibbins was never meant to pass because he was not quite up to wizard caliber. So he's created a new breed of wizards that's not the old school.
Anybody who eats banana flavored sushi pizza is not any kind of caliber. Hang on.
So I always figured
Hang
that. Wendell Poon. Wendell Poon. So I always figured he actually knew a lot more than the wizards around him knew.
Oh,
he
yeah.
just doesn't credit himself with knowing it. And sorry, I'm terrible with names, even reading them many times. But yeah, I think he's probably the smartest one in the room most of the time, but he doesn't think he is, and nobody else does either. And I kind of get this idea that he does think he's faking it, but he's not.
Yeah.
I think he's starting to learn he's not faking it, because it seems like in a couple of the more recent books, Ponder's starting to realize he holds all the practical positions.
Yeah, he mentioned.
Did say that he now controls the university council and what was it? Academicals.
Yeah. And then they were
I
like.
love the bits when you see him in the science books. If you've read the Science of Discworld books, poor Ponder. It's just like round world. Their construct, their theoretical, thought experiment. That's what he wants things to be. He wants a world where stuff works, simple laws. So it's just so cute to see the interaction. He's so attracted to that, but that's not how real world works.
If you want like a really cool book, and I read it and then I listened to the audio, is the wisdom, or is it the folklore?
Oh yeah.
Of Discworld. At the end is a real treat because it's a discussion between Terry and I can't remember the woman that knew all of the
one who writes it with.
Yeah, the anthropologist or folklorist. I don't remember her name.
And it's great because it's a nice dialogue. And the cool thing about that book, he takes apart, all of the little stuff and compares it to where he got it here. And there's so much on it I can't really even tell you, but it is a book you guys should.
And you all know about L-Space, right? The annotated Pratchett files, because
Yes.
it's just awesome. I'm so waiting for them to get caught up with the books.
Well, they got the wiki with has the newer books on it as well.
Oh, does it?
And
Good, I
it's
didn't
separate
know.
listings.
That's
so.
where I am right now, but it's not helping.
How are you getting a signal?
Verizon?
Yeah, I got a signal on Verizon too.
Fine.
But I'm trying. Sorry, I gotta deal with the guest.
No, but I love the annotated Pratchett files because it's great to go and you're like, was that a joke, or did I just think it was a joke? And it's great to go in and say, yeah, other people, I'm not the only one.
Or I know there was a joke. That's what I know there was something I was missing.
Yeah, some of the more English ones, I'm like, I don't get that one.
I'm more going with the inconsistencies, such as the ball in Unseen Academicals with the ball in Jingo, for instance. Where Karen had the ball and he took it out and they all played football at the end instead of, but then the game changed for Unseen Academicals. It's one of those little inconsistencies that sometimes rankle a little.
Maybe it was Australian rules.
Or the Aussie rules.
Yeah.
I think the ball in Unseen Academicals was like solid, wasn't it?
No, it was.
No, he
in the shove, yeah, it was solid. But Karen said he carried a deflated one in his pants.
Right. His was a
was a Gloinger. This was a Gloinger.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 years later, I'm going to not hold him to it.
I'm not getting a book or a reference in this, but did anybody mention Cunningham? He was the one in Equal Rights.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that's the one that
Simon.
Yeah, he was the one who offered her offered Esme a fellowship.
That's right. Yeah.
You have to admit, none of them before Red Cully really stick with you.
No, they don't.
Brown.
Yeah.
What we need is our own Radagast Brown to talk about Ridcully the Brown.
The terror of small, untouchable animals everywhere.
And I think Joss Atherton is such a great Red Cully in the series.
There was another one for the voice. I think Graham Crowther, who did it in the Cosgrove animated ones.
Oh yeah.
He was. You might recognise him if you ever saw the series Waiting for God. He was the.
Oh
he
yeah,
was Tom.
he is good. Yeah. Tom.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, I used to love that series.
Oh yeah, there's the two animated. How many animated? There's
the Witches, right?
2.5. They're really good. They're,
The Witches
right,
and
the animation's
Soul
dicey.
Music.
However, I'm surprised on how long they are. I mean, they didn't cut anything. It's not like an hour show. It
was 5 or 6 parts that they
yeah.
for like a stripping for a week,
And there's also some radio plays.
Yeah, and then the BBC radio plays was 6 radio plays.
You know, a couple of years. What was it? Almost. Were you here when they did Guards with John Rhys Davies?
That was great.
Yeah, the thing.
RT did it. The Atlanta Radio Theater Company.
It was. Well, here's the thing: is they were allowed to do the play, but it was not to be recorded. So that was the big stipulation. So they were able to do it. And it was fun. I actually sat in
It was
on
good.
that. And it was a lot of
John
fun.
Rhys Davies played the
Yeah.
leader of the Evan Brethren of the whatever.
Oh,
it
the
was,
Yvonne Knight.
And it was great. It was really very good. Those of you who haven't been to an artsy gig, I'll give them a cry out. They're really quite good.
Oh my God.
They've been doing 15, 20 years now, radio stuff. And they're actually doing a reading of The Scouring of the Shire for anybody who's into radio theater or
Oh, you're talking about the Atlantic or
Atlanta Radio
Yeah,
Theater
Radio
Company.
Company, yeah.
And they're very good.
They are awesome. They're when one guy used to do Lovecraft, they did some really great, not much horror, but they did War of the Worlds last night. I couldn't get
I missed that.
It
Yeah.
was awesome.
Was it?
Yeah.
And if you really like their stuff, they sell
always
a
pick
lot of their
pick up
stuff
their
recorded.
stuff.
They have podcasts.
There's yeah, you can pick up their audio, so do that now. Well, after this.
Well, you can do it if you have Verizon, apparently.
What?
You can do it if you have Verizon, apparently.
Gotta have some.
But all weekend I've only had service here and in the West End. So
It's better than all the rest of us.
My phone has
I've given
died
up on the internet
trying
because every time I try
trying
it
to
just
send a text.
I mean, I can barely get the phone to work a couple
Anyway.
times in these hotels.
Should we tell people what, I mean, anybody here want to know what they should start with? Anybody here not read his stuff?
I just recently got introduced to him.
Okay. What
And
did
it
you
was
start with?
completely by accident.
What did you start with?
I haven't read any of the books actually.
Oh,
okay.
I'm an avid movie collector and I do read books, but I have 10 nieces and nephews, so I'm always looking for interesting, movies and stuff. And I happened to see Hogfather and Color of Magic, and it looked really interesting, so I thought I'd pick it up because, I have nephews and nieces.
How old
And
are
it
your
was
nieces and nephews?
start at 13 and go to 18.
Oh my God.
perfect.
They're
They're
on
interested.
the 18.
So, but I have nephews who are into sci-fi, and they saw the movies. It immediately opened up a whole new world because then I was curious, was it just movies? But I figured he was a writer based on the concept of the Discworld. So I just recently picked up those two books.
This will get any child. When you have this young girl and she uses her brother as bait.
I have a niece who'll do that in a heartbeat. She loves her brothers.
Oh my
but-
God! Then pick up the Tiffany Aching book.
So I have a question.
Wheat Free Man.
Wheat Free Man is the first one, and
Oh,
then
the
Half
Living
Full
at That
Sky. So pick
And
those
don't
up.
forget Maurice. I adore
Oh, yeah.
Maurice.
Yeah.
And the Educated Rodents or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And going to Brick Track theme, the radio play of Maurice's Educated Rodents features a certain Mr. Tennant as
Does it really?
He's the Mighty
Dave-
Beans.
yeah.
He's
one of the-
Dangerous Beans?
He's Dangerous
Yes.
Beans.
I love Dangerous Beans.
I have a question for the room. After you discovered Pratchett and started catching up on the Discworld books, how many of you went chronologically by publishing date?
Is there any other way?
By miniseries.
I could do that.
Did anybody go by miniseries?
I just went who was online.
Well, what I did was I got
Two
into
miniseries.
Okay.
what I did was I got into him because of him. I was in England and I was lonely. He handed me.
A stack of them.
No, you handed me the Light Fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And I tried so hard.
That is a hard
And
one.
I gave it back to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, I cannot read this book. I can't read it. So then he gave me Guards.
Yeah, I'm terrible.
Then he gave me Guards, and I was like, that's it? Okay, give me whatever.
Right.
And so I read all the Guards books, and then I started on the Witches books. And then after I read that, I went back to the Light Fantastic, and then I went in order.
Right. I'm just curious because you see, if you Google it, how to read the Discworld, you see so many people recommending the miniseries, but then everyone I actually talk to does it chronologically.
And
But
if you do it chronologically, you miss so many little things.
Because I bought those two books, I basically went on Amazon and just went clickety click.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? And because enough of the two that I've read, I was like, I don't think I've bought any of them in order. I just kind of clicked on what
And you don't
I
have
like,
No, it's-
story-wise, and I don't
anyways.
feel like I've
Yeah.
missed anything.
We'll take two more
Anyway,
questions.
there were
You in the
questions.
back, and you had your hand up.
I'm good.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
We ain't
Don't
please.
run back here. We're good.
I was gonna say, I started with the audiobook, so it was whatever the library had first.
Yeah.
And that happened to be Sorcery, was my first book. And then I also was wondering, I remember coming across it when I was doing a Google search for something, something on a Twitter feed about him working with music or wanting to put music to something. Does anybody follow his Twitter?
No, I don't Twitter. Man, he doesn't Twitter that often.
No,
so
well,
it's like,
no, he Twitters actually quite a bit.
Oh, does
people,
he? It
people
doesn't
on
show
his
up in
behalf do.
Yeah, right.
So, but
Rob.
he's got a
Rob
huge
tweets.
Twitter feed, and it's just like, I mean, it changes hourly, and it's like, and I came across it, was trying to hunt around for the reference from the Google and couldn't find it. So.
No idea.
Okay. I didn't know somebody here might have followed the Twitter better.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm done.
I had a question. The difference between the American covers versus the British covers. Why are the American covers so bloody boring?
That's on everything.
Because it's American.
The publisher.
It's just the publisher. It happens on every single book. There was a book called for Sherlock Holmes, Mastermind, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. I like the one from Great Britain because it's like they remove half the letters. It's that thing, you know, if they remove half the letters, you can still read. And ours has got the pipe. It looks stupid. I don't know. It's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing, and publishers here think that we need to have it look a certain way.
It's the whole Philosopher's Stone.
They are.
Gorgeous.
They are.
It's like that's why I order everything from Amazon.
Well,
You can get them in Canada
the
that way
more
too.
simple graphic covers are sometimes a bid for a little more mainstream recognition because the portrait art with the people in robes is so associated with fantasy. I think publishers sometimes want to get away with that because they're hoping, you know, people who aren't into genre will pick it up.
If you put out a book that looks like the Phantom of the Opera poster, more people are going to pick it up than if it has elves and fairies.
I know, but see, then it still it will swing it back around.
I'm not saying I like it.
No, I know. But
I think that's the
thing
reason.
is, even when they don't do that here, you know, it's my whole thing. He should really be in regular fiction. You know, if you're going to produce stuff that doesn't look like genre books,
then don't shelve it there.
Don't shelve it there. Because here's the thing. People that go to genre thing, they're like, oh, that's kind of boring. Really? I mean, they don't know what to do. It's like, put it in regular fiction.
Yeah, so make it look like regular fiction. You can
Correct.
shelve it with regular
Exactly. That is my point. From
There are
see,
some
we
authors-
circled all full circle.
If they're big enough names, some authors get those sort of editions.
Yeah.
But I don't think Pratchett sales in North America
No,
are that
not
robust
yet.
to,
Not yet.
to do that.
Go out and put it out to your friends so he does, but.
Buy one and give one to a friend.
Okay, we're going to give out prizes. Wow. Let's try it again.
Okay, so what's our first prize?
It is, it's a lovely hardcover Stephen King dark horror, The Gunslinger Born. And it's a graphic novel, so it's very pretty. It's got lots of
words.
Pictures. With words. And then I think
good question.
Caro put a couple of little, there is, life is always better with Walker's shortbread. A glittery pen. And postcards. Ooh, Anglotopia.net. That's a very pretty postcard.
Go to that website.
TARDIS, something on the other side, Space 2099.
TARDIStopia is a Doctor Who related informational website that's it's also on the same page as Anglotopia. They're run by the same people.
And this is a novel by an author called Catherine Sullivan called The Crystal Throne, which is a YA fantasy. So for those of you who are looking for
Doctor Who writer.
new writers, YA authors are a great place to start because you know,
good question. Good question.
they can't use as much sex and violence, so they frequently have to have better plots, or better characterization.
Go ahead.
How did Ridcully describe Carrot in
Don't make it too hard.
the graphic novel?
Last Hero.
Yeah.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
I veto. I can't win anything.
Yeah.
I own that book. I
All
have
your
no
mine are
clue.
too hard.
I do too.
Okay. Oh yeah, good lad. Keith, got a sword.
Okay, what's the color of Moist Von Big's hat?
Gold.
There you go. You win a prize.
Oh, woo,
Who said it first?
I believe it was the gentleman with the camera was first.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Here we go.
Okay, what's next?
Next prize. Oh, this is
a big prize.
This is a nutritious prize.
So that's a surprise.
Oh, and I'm big.
I didn't know the front row knows what it is.
That's not mine.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay, now, all right. Why don't we just give it to the woman that needs to read this stuff?
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The big thing in there.
He's amazing. Yeah, he just Ian M. Banks.
Ian
Culture.
M. Banks is really, really, really.
I'll also give this away though. Does anybody want haggis? I'm so sorry. I've had it.
We're going easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the name of the Vimes' pet dragon?
You want the real name or the?
Errol.
Yeah.
That's
Yay. All right. What's the last thing?
The last prize is sorry. No, there's nothing breakable there. It's Tales of the City, 20th Anniversary Edition. So nothing,
Limited
well,
edition
other than
DVD.
SF, is slightly fantasy. Nothing skippy at all.
Oh, okay. The name of Death Scores.
Bingo.
You said it first, right?
Yeah.
No?
Sure.
Say it with conviction. Say sure. Really?
Yeah.
You're disappointed. You already won one prize.
Right.
Sir, come to the front and claim your prize.
All right. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate
So one more thing. If you
Dennis, I'll
have
stay.
the Dragon Con app, please rate this panel because it's like the last one.
And get a disco costume ready for next year. Need more disco costumes.
Yay.
I only saw one rinse win.
I know.
Told you.
I